It's a journey down the rabbit hole of rock and roll's past, present, and future. It's Barstool Rockers with your hosts, Jim Finn and Dan Michaels.
Welcome to Barstool Rockers, Episode 8 for April 2nd. I'm Dan Michaels, and I'll be flying solo today as Finn is off on a personal project and doing something he loves. For those of you listening for the first time, the name of the podcast is Barstool Rockers, but it's not about drinking. Early on in my career, I had a program director who explained the philosophy of the job as talking to the audience like you would a buddy you were sitting next to on a bar stool. Finn and I both being passionate about classic rock and prog rock, we want to bring that approach to you, so that's what we do. The podcast is a weekly conversation about what's happening in and around the music we're both very passionate about. Another goal we had when we set out on this project was that we wanted to introduce people to some voices they might not have heard before, whether it's a band whose music might appeal to them or a performer who has a great story to share. Today's one of those times, as we're honored to welcome to the podcast a gentleman you might already know, Cas.E McPherson. He's part of an Austin, Texas band called Alpha Rev, and he's also a member of a band we met 5 years ago this week, Flying Colors. Cas.E was asked to join the team of virtuosos Mike Portnoy, Steve Morse, Dave LaRue, and Neil Morse in a new project that would turn heads. Cas.E, welcome to the podcast. And to get things rolling, we're on the heels of South by Southwest. You've been a regular part of that now for several years. You played at least once this year, and I was fortunate enough to be invited to watch that through the Cas.E Sessions group. Did you play much this year, and were there any standout performances you remember?
Well, this South by I was really actually trying not to play, because I'm not, wasn't really pushing a record per se, and I kind of wanted to stay quiet for a year. But a friend of mine, Max, asked me to play he's on a new label, and they were having a little showcase at this castle, and he asked me if I'd play that with him, and so I did, and the label head there is an old friend of mine, and so so I ended up talking to him about his label, and we may end up doing some stuff together in the future. But I ended up playing a couple of shows just because I wanted to, and they were friends of mine. So other than that, Max is a great artist, and I'm trying to think. I really didn't actually see a whole lot of artists out there, but this year it was really the tech and the tech environment is really becoming kind of the rock star of South by Southwest. The music, I think bands have kind of seen that unless you're kind of hot that year, that you spend a lot of money to be industry people's background music. Mm-hmm. And so it can be very expensive for a band to do South by Southwest if they're having any kind of expectations other than just kind of playing some free shows. A lot of my industry friends just actually end up just going there to hang out with each other. They're not really looking to, take on more bands per se. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time right now.
Has it changed a lot over the past, let's say, decade since it really started getting national attention with the internet and everything? Oh
yes, I feel like it really has. It's the industry folk, it really becomes, it's really a festival for them. And it's the same with the tech world. It's the same with the film world there at South by. So where it started with bands would come in there with high hopes of, I'm going to get a booking agent, I'm going to get a manager, I'm going to get a label. Now it's the bands come in to do your meetings because everybody in the industry is there in one city. So it's, the real benefit there is a fun environment to get to hang out with, the industry side of music, as opposed to what maybe it started is my band going to get signed?
Okay, I'm going to go off topic for a moment. You're an Austin boy and a regular on the scene. Another guy from your neighborhood who I think is amazing is Monty Montgomery. Have you ever shared a stage with him?
I have. I did a show with him at Saxon Pub. Been able to play a show with him. I got to do a show with Willie Nelson. Some of those Ray Benson. Actually got to partake in some illegal activities with Ray Benson. And it's some of those really big kind of Austin, Texas staples that have created so much of a rich history for us, you know.
It's a great market, and I guess, you know, the other touchstone of Austin is, you know, Austin City Limits. Is there a performance in the wings there for Alpha Rev or for Flying Colors, maybe?
Oh, I think there will be. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I think it's just a matter of time. We've never really even approached them for any of the bands, and I ended up doing I was an MC with one of the head guys for Austin City Limits, the show itself. And so we were kind of chatting a little bit about that. So I think there's something with a TV show there, and obviously with the festival, once I have another, you know, Flying Colors would be great for a festival, for Austin City Limits Fest, and so would any of the new stuff we have coming out. We just have to, one of my bands needs to release a record. So.
Well, now we mentioned both bands real quick. Is there anything coming for Alpha Rev? I mean, you've got the music that's there, and I think that last album really was just the one that connected most for me. You know, it flowed as a package, and it really kind of, you know, you've got a good ability to connect with people and, you know, convey emotion with your music. Now, is that, I'll jump ahead on a question here. You know, a lot of people can sing the words, but you can actually get the emotion across. And that's one thing with that last Alpha Rev album I think was really good, and with both the Flying Colors albums it was really good. Is that because you've been through so much in your life and you've been to the dark corners and you've had the good times? Does that make it easier for you to be such a singer that can communicate with the audience so well?
Well, you know, I didn't start out as a very good singer. I was had a really bad voice, and I think that singing became kind of a therapy for me.
Okay.
You know, because like as if you were to scream or shout or yell or cry or whatever, and I think a lot of the tragedy or the things that I've experienced, like, you know, we all have our own story, but singing and, you know, the melody became something I could kind of, like, say, screw it, let it all go, and enter into a place where you didn't feel pain, you didn't feel suffering, you didn't feel loss, you didn't feel fear, you know, and so it definitely has become a thing for me of like it's
almost a catharsis,
an escape, but a catharsis, like a therapeutic thing for me to. So so sometimes I turn it to 10 because that's all I know how to do, you know.
Well, we all have to have it, right?
Yeah.
So now this past week was the 5th anniversary of the first Flying Colors album. Were you much into progressive rock before that? Did you see where this band would come? And, you know, it kind of became a church to a lot of the fans.
Yeah, you know, it was really interesting how that all happened for me. And I didn't realize, but I was into progressive rock before I knew what progressive rock was. I was writing in 5 and 7, and my first band, Indochine, was a very progressive band. I just didn't know that there was a style like that. I didn't know there was a community that followed music like that. And if I had known, I think I probably would have been into that community much earlier. But, you know, Mike recognized that in me when I didn't even see it in me. And so because it was him that asked me to join, I had to make a choice. You know, I was in the middle of my pop career with Hollywood Records, with Disney, and they were all really frowning upon this idea. I thought it was terrible for my image, and that it was going to ruin me as a musician. And I had to make a choice. Did I want to do what business people were telling me to do, or did I want to do what felt fulfilling to my soul? You know, and it was just such an opportunity, obviously, to play with Mike and Neil and Steve and Dave, and I was pretty sure that they would fire me the first day anyway.
Now, why do you say that? Why? I've heard you say that in a few interviews. Why did you think that?
Well, first of all, I'm about 20 years younger than them, and they're also all like, you know, these guys are like rock gods. They've all been on the cover of all their magazines. They're some of the most respected and brilliant musicians in their field, you know, and I just didn't know if I could hang. I didn't know if what I did was enough for what they did. And what surprised me is the first day we were there together, I realized, okay, there's some magic here. And it's that imposter voice, we have to let go of feeling like we're not good enough in order to kind of see how things can be. And Steve really sealed the deal for me. When he would play a solo, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's like the stuff I would sing. And he and I kind of got really connected immediately together on this melodic level because we both care so deeply about, like, melody almost becomes a spiritual path at that point. You can tell it is for Steve, and so we really connected on that, and it showed me where my strength was in that band,
now,
was the emotive melody.
Did the writing process with Flying Colors change the way you wrote? Do you compartmentalize the projects? Do you the Alpha Rev stuff? Do you have a different writing approach for that than you do with Flying Colors and you do with the current project you're working on?
Well, I wish I could. What Flying Colors basically said, well, what do you mean you don't write the music you want to write? Because Mike and Neil and Steve and Dave grew up with careers making music that they wanted to make, not trying to fit in some kind of format. And obviously, now many years later, I'm seeing that progressive rock has a format to it too. But the original intent, which is what I love about prog rock, was that there is no format. You make a song however you want to make, however long you want to make it. And that's kind of the true heartbeat of prog rock, in my opinion. And what's affected me with Alpha Rev and the Cas.E Sessions and Casey McPherson music is I'm starting to explore different styles, whether it's Americana or pop, and just able to think outside the box more. I can't play as well as Neil or Steve in terms of technical abilities, but they've given me the opportunity to think outside the box and say, what do you want to do with this song?
Now, folklore has it that the first album came together in like under 2 weeks, like 13 days, I think I read somewhere.
Yes.
Is there truth to that?
Yes, it is. It felt like we were all on a ride together. And it still does to some degree, but it was a first date. We hadn't spent any time together except for the day that we showed up to play. So our relationship began with the music, and you have super high efficient people like Mike and Steve primarily to create an environment that we could move very, very quickly in a very short amount of time. And, no one was scared to give ideas out. So we were able to, and it continues to be this way. We don't run out of ideas. We just run out of time.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be the most aggravating part of it. So let's jump forward a little bit now to what I wanted to make sure we got to today was to help people get the word out about the project you're doing. If people go to CasESessions.com, CASE Sessions.com, they'll find out about your Case Studies project, which right now this week you just released episode 6. Tell the people a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, well, this is also probably a product of being a part of this prog rock band and thinking outside the box. But I wanted to be able to make music that kind of create a different kind of value to it, in the sense that I wanted to be able to take experiences, start from the very beginning of the song, which is an experience you might have that day, and show how it transforms into music, and also give me a platform to create music in a different way than like trying to write for a single or write for a particular thing. This allowed me a different way of doing it. So what it is every month I stumble upon some kind of experience or immerse myself in one. I document it, and then I go and write a song around it. I document that, and then I go and record the song, and I document that, and I release a little short documentary and the song every month around this kind of topic. And it's been one of the most freeing, enjoyable musical experiences I've ever had, and it's paid for by the members. So people become a member by paying like $5.99 a month, and it's not a public thing. So just the members are the ones that are getting the music in the film.
Now, do you have plans to release the songs once you get a bulk of them amassed? Do you have plans to release them on CD or release them, let's say, electronically, or is that just going to stay a private collection?
I think the plan might be is that every year I would take them as a group and create a record and a season out of them.
Okay.
And so that way, because there are certain ones like the one on Syria and the one on, the one we just released on deportation about Jose and his family. And, those, it would be nice for the public to be able to, I think it's a good thing to put those out into the world to kind of raise our awareness of different people's experiences and how we look at the world through other people's eyes,
Well, in a couple of the first episode, Peacemakers with Hallie, that seems to come back around all the time. Ted was in the session just last week on Thursday when everybody got together. And just so the audience knows, I'm one of the people who subscribes to you. And I told you earlier on the phone, when you announced this, I really wanted to be able to do it, to be able to support you in the project. And I didn't have a full-time job then. The job I had closed down, and I was supporting myself doing voice work and, live sound work. But you announced, I think it launched, and I got hired full-time at the same time. I was like, that's it. I got to do it. It's karma. So that episode keeps coming back around, and Ted was in the audience last Thursday. And that was a really impactful one, too.
Yeah, it was, and that's kind of what kicked it off, and what started it for me was this story about Hallie Geyer and my manager calling me about writing a song for National Peace Day for the United Nations. And that got me on this trail that sparked the whole thing. And I ended up actually going to New York to meet Hallie's sister and Ted, and we had a bunch of kids sing on top of Peacemakers. So when we released that song publicly, they're going to get a piece of that. So they're going to be able to use that song as kind of a calling card for them, I hope. And, it's just, man, you just feel good about doing something like this. And it's sustainable because there's members involved. So the members have created a way for me to be able to pay for all this stuff, without having to need a label or borrow money, or have to make a lot of money off of it to pay back people.
And then let's see, episode 2, you worked with Alan Parsons on that one. Was there any standout moments to that? Did that come in with a layer of intimidation to it?
Oh, for sure. He's one of the greatest producers of all time and engineers. And, I was just very excited to kind of document that process. And so that was really cool to get to see his perspective. And every time we get someone else's perspective, ours just gets a little bit, broader, which I think is really interesting how that works. So that was, I can't remember which episode that was. I think it was the You Are the Creative.
You Are the Creative, yes.
2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and you have an ability to leave your ego at the door, it seems, that in all these projects, and you were open to his input. Now, would the earlier Cas.E, the Indochine days Cas.E, have been as open to suggestion as you are now?
I don't think so. I think that I have watched very, very successful musicians, guys that I want to end up like one day. And I see that some of the best guys are the most humble. And I'm not there, but I know that that's, in terms of getting the best perspective on life. Plus I got married and had kids, and man, if there's anything that's going to slice your ego into a few pieces, it's getting married or having children. And, so I hope I can get to a place where all I'm here is to serve the music and to serve what's kind of happening in the world. And in terms of, that's the best place for an artist to be. And you get to really, you're happiness comes out of the creativity and how people interact with it, and not whether or not the light is bright enough on you, you know. But there was a day that I was very much, that was very important to me because I needed to feel important, to feel valued, you know.
There's always that old saying that, you know, there's no limit to where you can go in life as long as you don't mind who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And that's
very true.
Yeah, exactly. Then in episode 3, that kind of connects to this last one we were talking about, you know, the episode about change, and that was the one you featured the Flying Colors writing session in. And it seems like everyone in the band at some point came to a crossroads. You know, you had your issues, and I think that's the one that I identified with the most, because I could really think about, you know, the days when I was working in a bigger city and we were partying nonstop, and I kind of hit a wall, and I had to make a choice to remove myself from a situation, remove myself from being around people I loved, and a radio job that was constantly, you know, providing ego boosts, but was destroying me as a person. And I think there's a few people in that in the video for that experienced that same thing.
Yeah, it baffled me to get to ask the guys those questions and see what their responses were. It gave me a lot more respect than I already had for them. So yeah, that was very cool.
It was a good way to connect with the band. And then, of course, episode 4 entitled Syria, about Aleppo, that really changed, I think, my impressions of what was going on over there. You know, we heard a lot about it during the political debates. You know, we heard the word Aleppo all the time, but, you know, nobody really had an idea. And then you shared the footage of you know, what real people were dealing with.
Yeah, it changed mine too. It was such I emailed and messaged many people there. You could just get on Twitter and do hashtag Aleppo, and you can see people that are living in Syria right now that are facing being gassed, being bombed. Literally, like today, I'm sure that somebody died there, and someone tweeted about it because they were next to the person that died.
Yeah.
And so we forget that this kind of suffering is happening, and regardless of who's causing it, you know, I think there's an awareness of just human suffering, and our desire to stop that, I think, has a lot of value to it. That's like a great place to at least start, you know, and it seems like sometimes we can get wrapped up on whose fault it is, as opposed to, man, let's just stop it.
And then, of course, episode 5, we got to take a trip to Mexico with you on the Plastic Sea, and just see a lot of the things that are washing up and really make people wonder, you know, what I don't need to throw this thing out of the car, or, you know, over here. It needs to go there properly. Yeah,
the biggest thing for me with that was I didn't realize there was there's an island of trash the size of Texas in the ocean, and just keeps continuing to build. And it's just, you know, it was cool to get to explore what these temporary kind of fixes that we create in our lives, whether it's our relationships or the products that we use, that it has, you know, real consequences. And I don't consider myself an environmentalist. The only reason I recycle is because my wife makes me, but I'm glad she makes me, you know?
Yeah. And then, of course, finally, just this past week, episode 6 came out, and you were talking about your experience going to Mexico to perform a wedding for some friends, and you got there, and your daughter had done some magic marker enhancements to your passport, and that left you kind of a refugee.
Yeah, it was the first time I've ever felt that before, and I think, you know, this issue with immigration and deportation, and I understand both sides, and it was interesting to feel like the person that's being sent back to your country, because this kind of feeling of being unwanted because of a legality, you know?
Yeah.
Not because you're a bad person or you're doing something illegal, but because of like in the lyric, dotted I's or crossed T's, you know, because something that seems kind of minute. So that was, you know, I was grateful for that experience in the sense that, you know, a different perspective for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's what a lot of the music's been about that you've been working on, has been perspective in this project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then one other thing, so everybody gets an opportunity to get the song and to get the video, but then also once a month you also put on a little private show for everybody, and there's a concert, and there's a lot of requests that are thrown out, and you just get to experience the music a little differently. And one of the things I thought was really cool is you've actually let people make suggestions on how you make the music.
Yeah, and I want to do that a little bit more, and I'm trying to figure out a good way of doing that. I think this private Facebook group we started is going to be really good for that, but I want it to be more inclusive in terms of collaborative. And so, this membership becomes kind of like a family, and it's a whole other way of making music, where you're the people who listen and the fans are able to kind of participate on, hey, I like that, I don't like this, or try that, and it just shows you that melody and rhythm and expression can be such a communal thing if we're okay with allowing that without even sacrificing any quality, because I still get to choose where to go. But it's been really fun hearing people's suggestions. It's like that last one we did on episode 5. Guys were asking me to try out some different drum things, bass things, and it was fun. It was cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, this, you're not always doing these solo. You do a lot of stuff with a drum machine, and you've been playing with a looper this last one. And also in the last episode, you brought a friend of yours, Tony Rogers, a cellist, in. And that really added a texture to the music this past time here.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the strings, and I've been looking for a guy of his caliber that didn't have a day job, that was doing music full time, so I could hire him in the studio. And Tony's been great to work with, and he'll definitely be kind of a long-standing part of this project, I feel like, in the future, because he's so versatile and he adds so much. And
you've given the audience a chance through this project too to look at the writing process you use, using your phone, taking voice notes and things, so you kind of give people a view behind the scenes to this. So again, we got to let people know what to do to get involved and what the benefits of getting involved are.
Well, it's you go to CaseSessions.com, CASE Sessions.com, and you can sign up there, and you get a 20-minute documentary and the song all around the same topic every month, as well as a private show through a private Facebook group that you'll be a part of, where you can request songs and we can talk about issues or talk about subjects. And, I guess all I suggest is try it out. You can try it out for a month, and if you don't like it, you can cancel.
There you go. Now, last thing here, you guys recently did a show with Flying Colors at the Cruise to the Edge launch, and fairly well documented on Facebook with the writing process has begun for the next Flying Colors album. When are you guys heading to the studio? When's the album going to production, and what are you guys thinking for a release date on it?
Well, we need one more week or two of writing to start the official recording process. Like, in terms of, we're halfway through the record, and so I think that will hopefully happen the beginning of the summer, beginning of the fall, if at the very latest. And then at that point, we'll start fixing all of our parts. And so I think we're probably looking at like a 2018 release, early 2018 release is what we're hoping for.
That's great news to hear, and I hope people will join on the Cas.E Studies project. Again, just go to Cas.E Sessions.com. That's CASE Sessions.com and learn more there. Cas.E, thank you so much for your time today. I know we went a little long. You have a studio session to get into, but I really appreciate the time you spent with us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
We'll share more info on Cas.E, some other interviews he's done along the way, and some links to his various music projects, and a link to the Cas.E Sessions site on the episode page for today at barstoolrockers.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a few ways you can do so. First off, we've added a page to the website where you can drop a buck or two in the tip jar. Just go to barstoolrockers.com, click on support at the top of the page. Another way you can support us is just by subscribing to the podcast. It doesn't cost anything. Just go to iTunes or your favorite app and subscribe to Barstool Rockers. If you like what you hear, please rate or review the podcast, as it helps the show rise in visibility and helps new listeners find us. And also, if you like it, share the link with someone who you think might like it too. A special thanks to our friend Joe Kelly for being our intro voice, and to our friend Anastasia Vishnevsky for creating the music. It sets the mood, and as always, thank you for listening, and a special thanks today to Casey McPherson for spending some time with us. Until next week.
Work hard, rock hard, eat hard, sleep hard, grow big, wear glasses if you need them.